Or-
So the question, what I got a couple of questions, but one
Okay.
was a really good question that somebody asked, and I don't remember the exact question off the top of my head, but it was about the fact that you had Agent A listing a house. Hello. At Agent A listing a house, and Agent B showed the house. The buyer liked it, but didn't move on the house. And so a couple weeks later, this buyer that showed the house that was showed the house by Agent B, they want to make an offer on the house. Unfortunately, Agent A's listing agreement had ended and now it was listed with a new company. So it was listed with A. It was shown while A was listing it. By the time the buyer decides to buy the house, it's now listed with firm C by Agent
Yeah.
C.
Yes.
And so the question had to do with what about commission? And of course, as you know, the answer is Agent A, the agent who was listing the house when Agent B first showed it, when this buyer first showed it, they don't get paid. They are not entitled to any monies. Why? Because of the agreement, the listing agreement. If that seller was listing with person A, and then the buyer decides to wait and now it's listed by person C. Person C is getting all of that commission, even though it wasn't their work that got it sold. That's
Because
just the
because
way
they
of the
have their
listing
own
agreement.
buyer agent. The buyer has his own
Yeah, the
agent.
buyer has their own buyer's agent. It
Yeah.
was a third party agent.
Right.
Because buyer's agent doesn't really matter. Most, of course, most listing agreements are set up so that it's the seller paying anyway. But yeah, they were very shocked to see that listing A, they didn't make any money off of this, even though they were the listing agent when it was first shown. So
Right.
that was one of the questions. It was a good question because I think it's something we don't talk a lot about, or you're not often asked that in a lot of practice questions, but it is something that you need to know. It is a very testable fact.
Yep. That's
Mhm.
a good one.
What's a good question that you've gotten recently?
When can a agent put a sign in a seller's yard?
Not until you have some type of signed agreement and permission,
Right.
which I'm assuming that was the point. The idea you can't put nothing nowhere unless you got a signed agreement.
The question was like, the idea was, okay, so I run into you at the mall and I say, listen, I'm going to have you list my house on Friday. Here are the terms, la, la, la. We talk about it. I'm supposed to come out and get the listing agreement signed by you Friday night, but it's Friday morning. And the seller says, go ahead and put the sign in my yard now while you're on this side of town. No, we can't do that, right?
Absolutely not. You're trying to go to real estate jail.
Yep.
All right. So, I mean, that was just two questions that we've had recently.
Yeah.
If you have a question, go ahead, drop it in the chat for us. But other than, I think we should probably go ahead with some vocab if you got it.
Yeah. We're going to do some vocab. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to kind of take turns. So this is like what's going to happen is Candace is still here. She has not disappeared. But when I share my screen, there's only so much room. So it's going to go back and forth between us talking, whoever's talking. So I'll read off the question and then we will talk about it, both of us. So,
Okay.
said to run with the land. Which one of these terms means said to run with the land? Is it liens, attachments, appurtenances, or encumbrances?
Ooh, I know. I know.
What do
I
you
know.
guys think? Put it in the chat if you know. Which one is it? Is it liens, attachments, appurtenances, or encumbrances?
Hmm.
Live studio audience. Anybody know this one? All right, so let's talk about it. Appurtenances are things that run with the land, right? If something's appurtenant, it runs with the land.
You
Okay.
know, you know how I teach it is I think about somebody with kids. So, like, I don't have kids, but let's say you have a daughter,
Yeah.
right? If you had been single while your daughter was younger and you started dating somebody, it wasn't just you. They weren't just dating you. They were dating you and your daughter came with you.
That's a
That's
good
what I
one.
think of when I think of appurtenances. It's Or just like with anybody's family, even if you don't have kids, if you're dating me and all my baggage and all my family comes with me. Like it's a pertinent. You can't have me without all this other stuff.
Yeah. So if it runs with the land, let's say in an easement, for example, an easement, a permanent easement. If I own a property and there's an easement for Candace to use my driveway to get out to the road, and the easement is a pertinent, if I sell my house to Heather, now Heather has to let Candace use the driveway and come out to the road. Hey, Elizabeth. So that's how it's going to work, right? It runs with the land. No matter who the owner is, something appurtenant is stuck with that property. It doesn't matter if it changes hands or whatever. Candace, give us an example of encumbrances and how you would talk about that.
Well, I think I was actually getting ready to say that. I think people get encumbrances mixed up a lot. An encumbrance is something that takes away from your use or the value of the land. So there are lots of different types of encumbrances. Like you just mentioned, easements, you
Mhm.
have liens, you have restrictive covenants. There's all of these different types of encumbrances, and not all of them are bad. Like, no, when we talk about liens, yes, nobody really wants to owe money, whether it's a land or a person. But if you think of restrictive covenants, also known as protective covenants, those run with the land. It's an encumbrance because it's limiting what somebody can and can't do with the land. But I think of encumbrances as something that is changing. You know what I say? It messes with your bundle of rights. It is
Yeah.
somehow messing with your bundle of rights. So if it's a lien, it's changing the value. If it's an easement, it's changing the fact that you can't use, or it's going to say you can't do something that you want with the land because somebody has the right to use it. So I think
Right.
encumbrances are big. I feel like I'm missing an encumbrance. Which one am I missing? I said
Let's see.
liens. I
Yeah.
said
Lien, easement, um,
encroachments,
encroachments. Yeah.
restrictive
Yeah,
covenant.
those are the big ones,
Yeah,
CC&R sometimes. So what about let's talk about liens. So general
specific.
lien versus a specific lien. So a
Well,
general lien, examples of general liens would be like your income taxes. If you don't pay your income taxes, the IRS can put a general lien, attach it to everything that you own. Specific lien, example of a specific lien would be like a mortgage lien. If I took out a mortgage to buy a property, then that lien is going to attach to the property that I mortgaged, not my rental property on the other side of town, the property that I actually mortgaged. So a specific lien attaches to one property, a general lien attaches to multiple assets that we have. So judgment liens, federal income tax liens, those are the two big ones that I can think of.
it's
Right. In
it's always the
general.
IRS is what I always bring up.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you owe the IRS money, what can they not take?
Right.
Besides your life, and take your freedom. But if you owe the IRS money and then you buy houses or cars or whatever it is, that IRS general lien, it attaches to you. It follows you and anything that you may get in the future versus a specific lien attaches to that one specific property. So if
Yeah.
I have a house and I have a mechanics lien on it and I give that house to you, Maria, and I don't clear the mechanics lien, that's now your property and that mechanics lien is your problem. So it
Yeah.
transfers with the property. It's specific to the property.
Oh, another thing we didn't talk about, voluntary versus involuntary lien. So a voluntary lien would be one, the best one to think of, the best example I can think of is a mortgage lien. I don't want to owe anybody money, but I want to borrow this money. So if I want to take out this mortgage, I've got to accept the fact that they're going to put a lien. So it's voluntary
Yeah. Voluntary,
versus
you signed up for
involuntary.
it.
Yeah. Versus
Nobody is
involuntary.
ever forcing you to take out a mortgage or deed of trust.
Right.
However, an involuntary lien, real property tax liens. I don't
Yep.
remember them asking me if I wanted to pay those.
All right. Next we have the most detailed of the appraisal reports in which conclusions are supported and explained. Is it the letter form appraisal report, the narrative form appraisal report, the grand form appraisal report, or the short form appraisal report? What do you guys think? Put it in the chat if you know. Which one do you think it is? The letter form appraisal report, the narrative form appraisal report, the grand form appraisal report, or the short form appraisal report? What do you guys think?
So we're going to go with your answer B. Let's see if she is correct.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Narrative form.
I had faith in her. I had faith in
Narrative
her.
form. All right, so let's see. Narrative form is when we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty. It's a really detailed report. It's going to have all kinds of explanations about the neighborhood, the market trends. It's really going to get to be a very long appraisal report. Most of the time, narrative form is going to be a little bit more overkill than we need, right? We're not going to need some big long appraisal report. Let's talk about, while we got this up here, Candace, let's talk about appraisal types. Let's talk about the three appraisal approaches that they're most likely to be asked about on the test.
The three appraisal types, they're going to be talking about the sales comparison, otherwise known AKA as the market data approach.
Yep.
There is the cost approach, and there is the income approach. So we know an appraiser, when they sit down to do an appraisal, they've got to come in and they've got to say, all right, which one of these makes the most sense for this property that I need to find the value of? So we know the sales comparison approach is when you've got lots of good comparable properties. We know in the sales comparison approach, they've got this property, let's call it property A, they need to know the value of. So they find at least three other properties that were similar that have sold recently and say, hey, if those properties sold for X, Y, and Z, I can use that data to figure out what this property A is worth. So
Well,
in
let's
order,
talk about the memory trick before we do the other ones. The memory trick is Robin Hood.
I don't know this
Robin Hood.
memory trick. What is this one?
Robin Hood robs from the rich and he gives to the poor. So if the comp is superior compared to the subject, it's rich, and we're going to rob for it. We're going to make a negative adjustment. I didn't even think of this when my Florida teacher taught us. And then if he gives to the poor, then we're going to make a positive adjustment if the comp is inferior, right? So if we have a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom subject property and a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom comparable property, the comp is inferior compared to the subject, right? So we've got to make a positive adjustment to bring it up to the level of our subject.
I always
Yeah.
teach it in two ways, both using acronyms. I first will teach it as CIACBS, just, you know, acronyms that you know. If the comp is inferior, you're adding. And if the comp is better, you're subtracting. So if you look at the comp and you look at the subject property, if the comp is inferior, you're going to be adding value to it. You're trying to turn it and make it match the subject. But if the comp is better, then you're going to be subtracting from the comp because you want it to be on the um, same line, at the same level as the subject property. I love that there's different ways to teach it.
What was the acronym? I'll put it in the chat.
CIA, if the comp is inferior, you add,
Okay.
and CBS, if the comp is better, you subtract.
On the cost approach, what's a type of property that would likely call for a cost approach to be used on the appraisal? What kind of property? What's an example that you guys might see on the exam?
Nice question.
Yeah, so we
Oh,
got library and church, new construction, that's another good one. So special use properties we would use cost approach on many times. New construction when it's too new to have comps, like the neighborhood is brand new and nothing sold, so we can't use sales comparison. That'd be another one. Schools, I mean, that's good. So church, schools, library, post office, fire station,
golf
anything that's very
courses,
special.
anything
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
Anything where you aren't gonna have a good I always give the example of dome homes or houses that look like little half circles or like half a golf ball, because I think they're fabulous. Just, I'm just odd like, but if you were to try to buy one and you wanted to know the value, there is no way that appraiser is gonna come up with 3 recently also dome-shaped houses. Can't happen. So they would have to use the cost approach. And in the cost approach, what we know we're going to do is first, the appraiser has to figure out how much it would cost to rebuild it. And when they rebuild it, it's either going to be a reproduction or it's going to be a replacement. Are they going to make it exactly the same or are they going to make it similar? So a reproduction is going to be an exact replica. A replacement is similar. And the example I like to give like for that is I think you know this, Maria. My dad lives in a historic home in Detroit. So if they did the reproduction, we would have to figure out and we'd have to do all the methods. Like he has plaster walls. A reproduction, we're figuring out the cost of the plaster walls. Replacement, we can go and get some drywall from Home Depot.
Right.
Right? So first you got to figure out how you're going to rebuild it and then you got to price it. And Maria, what are the three different ways to price out something in the cost approach?
Well, on a replacement cost, we've got to get I think what you're talking about, labor and material cost, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you
well,
mean?
the square foot method.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So square foot method. And so what should we put that in the chat?
Yeah.
I feel like we should put that in the chat. So
Well, I'll talk about it. You put it in the chat. So
yeah.
you've got the square foot method, which is going to be your least accurate. That's where they're like, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's a kitchen versus a bathroom or a great room or living room. We're just going to assume the price per square foot is exactly the same. So it's kind of like if you go to new construction homes, they'll say, "Oh yes, we've got lovely new homes in the 300,000." Well, that price is going to vary depending on do you have a huge kitchen and bathrooms or is most of your house like bonus room? So you got the square foot method. The most common way that an appraiser will price this out is going to be the unit in place method, which I love because it makes the most sense to me. The unit in place is where they look at the units of the house, what makes up the house. The roof is going to cost you this much, and the flooring is going to cost that much, and the electrical is going to be this. So they're going through and looking at the different parts that are in the house. And then it's a little bit more accurate. So if you decide to go with a really nice upgraded electrical or plumbing or something, it's going to be reflected in the value. So that's what I think is most accurate, most real. Well, I won't say most accurate. It's most widely used. If you want the most accurate, the most detailed, the most spot on the nose, that is going to be the quantity survey method. Because in that way, you're going to have to know how many nails did it take? How many two by fours did we use? How many doorknobs did we need? How many feet did we use in electrical wiring? So, I mean, that is a very, very detailed way to go about how much it would cost to rebuild the property.
The next place. Now that we've got that, let's assume we're just going to use the most basic method. Let's just use square foot method, right? We've got our number.
Mhm,
Now we have to be able to plug in our depreciation. So we have to take away the depreciation. So if I'm replacing a 50-year-old building, I can't replace it with another 50-year-old building. I've got to replace it with something new. So, what's the difference between what somebody would pay for the brand new property versus my old property I'm trying to find the value of? And we've got to plug that into our formula for depreciation. So let's make up some numbers, Candace. Let's say it's going to cost 400,000. I'm typing this in the chat as I'm saying it. 400,000 for labor and materials for the replacement cost
mhm,
minus, let's say, the depreciation between my old and new is 50 grand. So let's put that
mhm.
in there. So now we're at 350. But we're not done because if my property were to burn down right this minute, what's left? The land. So we're going to have to
Mhm.
add the land value back in. What's our imaginary land value, Candace?
Let's say it's 45,000.
All right, 350,000 plus. I'm just kind of typing this in here. Plus 45,000 is 395, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
395.
395.
So our cost approach would be 395.
I think that's where students often get the math problem wrong when they have it. They forget that when we talk about replacement and our depreciation, that is just with the structure.
Yeah.
I just said the only way to come up with the value of land is through the sales comparison approach. So you use the cost approach for the structure and the sales comparison approach for the land, add it all together, and what do you?
A legal term for personal property. Is it a movable fixture, amenity, or chattel? A
Ooh,
legal term for personal property. What do you guys think? All right. Yes, chattel. Chattel. There we go. Right.
very good. It's one of those synonyms. And there are a ton of synonyms in this class.
So personal property would be movable,
Mhm.
right? Usually we can move it around. It's not a fixture because a fixture is part of our real property. Let's see, what else can we say about this? An amenity. Somebody give me an example of an amenity of your home. What about your home? What's an amenity of your home? Just thinking about your house that you're sitting in or your apartment, wherever you live, what's an amenity? I'll tell you mine. I have a gazebo in my backyard. I'll type in there.
Ooh, what's an
Yeah, a little
amenity? Ooh,
gazebo.
we have pool. We have a neighborhood pool.
Pool. There you go. Neighborhood pool. Perfect. And did you see what she said? A neighborhood pool. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in her backyard. It's for the whole neighborhood's use, but that's an amenity of the neighborhood. Yeah, a pool. There you go, Albie. Yeah, definitely.
An
The other
amenity
one,
is something more. It's something. It's an extra. It's a
right,
bonus.
close to a school, right? Close to the school that you attend. That could be an
Mhm. They
amenity.
might have
Yeah,
neighborhood parks.
yeah.
Just anything extra. Lots of extra amenities.
All right. A contract which may be either affirmed or rejected at the option of one of the parties. Is it exemplary, avoidable, void, or impounded?
Hmm.
Thing.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead. I think we can remove impounded. I mean, I just think of my car.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
think it's
impounded is
impounded. I don't think any of our people thought it was impounded. I think let's just go ahead and give you
great.
it's either exemplary, voidable, or void.
So what does everybody think? Is it let's narrow it down even further. Is it voidable or void, you guys? Voidable, right? Yeah.
Exemplary sounds so nice though.
Voidable. It can be voided by the injured party, right? So if I came in and I said, Candace, sign this contract or else I'm going to tie you up and throw you in the closet, and she signs it under duress, Candace is the injured party. She's the one who decides whether or not she's going to move forward or she's going to back out, right?
Depends
Unvoidable.
on how big of a threat. Are you gonna throw me back in the closet?
But if she decides that I'm acting crazy, but she still likes the contract, she can move forward, right?
I
Let's
can
move
move forward.
forward.
Yep.
You can move forward if she wants to. All right, next question. Let's see. We got a comprehensive plan to guide the long term physical development of a particular area. Is it master plan, balance sheet, public report, or zoning? What do you guys think?
Ooh.
Master plan, balance sheet, public report, or zoning? So let's narrow it down. We know it's not balance sheet because that would be like if I was
That'd be
doing
yeah.
for my business. That's kind of weird. Public report, meh, that doesn't sound too good. So we're down to master plan or zoning. What do you guys think it is? Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, we
Yeah.
got an A, we got a master plan. All right, I see us
Information
getting this.
on it.
All
Yeah.
right, we see master plan, a master
Everybody's doing
plan.
great on this one. So, master plan, right? That's our comprehensive plan to make sure that we can all live in happiness and harmony in the same community. All
Uh-huh.
right, next question. Created when a grantor transfers land conditionally. Ew, this is a little bit tricky. I like this one. Fee simple estate, defeasible estate, life estate, or estate at will. What do you guys think?
Mhm.
Conditionally being the operative word.
Well, I'm going to help them out by eliminating one, and that is the estate at will, because that is a type of non freehold estate. Non freehold estate is a fancy word for a leasehold estate, and that has to do with leasing. And if we're transferring land, we're not talking about leasing. So let me just go ahead and get rid of estate at will.
Yeah. Yeah. So conditionally would be
Do,
on
do, do, do.
defeasible estate.
Defeasible estate. Hey, now how
Because
do you
look at that
usually
word defeasible. Looks like defeated, doesn't it?
That's how I usually say it. I'm like, your ownership can be defeated. It can be ended. So they're putting on a condition, something about your owning. I was, give the example. I'm gonna give you this land as long as you don't use it as a nudist colony. No offense to people who are nudists, but I say, hey, you can use it as long as you never turn this property into a nudist colony. If you do turn it into a nudist colony, then guess what? I'm getting ownership back. What?
So
That's it.
right now, let's do another one. I'm going to put another one up here, not to distract people from the news colony, but life estate. If I gave Candace a life estate for as long as she's alive, and I said that when Candace passes away, the property reverts back to me. It's got a reversionary interest going back to me. But guess what? Candace outlives me. I die first. What happens then? Who gets it then? I gave Candace a life estate for as long as she's alive. I have reversionary interest and has to revert back to me when she dies. But I kicked the bucket before Candace. Now who gets the property when Candace dies? You guys follow
I
all
just
that?
get to keep it, right? That's the answer? Get to keep it?
What
That is not the right answer.
is not the answer? So my heirs, right?
Your
My
ear.
heirs get it.
Very
So,
nice.
like, if I had left the property in my will to my daughter and Candace outlives me, then when Candace passes away, it would go to my daughter. So that's just a life estate one that people sometimes get confused on. I
So
don't
we
know.
got 4 minutes. Maybe we should do one more question.
Let's do one more. Next question. Property which, generally speaking, cannot be moved. This includes wells, minerals, or stock in a mutual water company.
Well, we know
Lease,
what answer it's not since we just had it.
right. Lease pendants, personal property, chattel, or real property.
I think this is a great question because we just talked about chattel, and
Yeah.
another word for chattel was personal property. And
Yeah.
personal property can be moved. So I love the fact that off the bat, we can eliminate chattel and personal property. I love
Indeed.
it.
Indeed. So, what do you guys think? It's not chattel. It's not personal property. Yes, Maria, awesome. It is real property. Yeah. Real property. Heather got it. Yep. Good job, guys.
I love it.
Good job,